Welcome to the Empire State Sports Report, your number one source for everything New York Giants, New York Yankees, and New York Mets. I am your host, Adrianna, and today I'm coming to you live from Mobile, Alabama. I am down here for the Senior Bowl. This is strictly Senior Bowl. Everything that you want to know, it's right here. This is what we're going to cover in this episode. We're going to talk about my favorite players that I have seen so far this week that I have been impressed with. We are going to talk about my conversation that I had with Giants GM Joe Schoen during the media portion today. That will be at the end, so make sure you stick around. We're going to cover off on Mike Kafka's press conference that he said he spoke to the media for about 15 minutes yesterday, and then also talk about some of the player interviews that I have. Some of them are over on my Instagram at Empire State Sports Report if you want to go see them now. I also have been here for 48 hours living off of coffee. So if there's any little pause, it's because I'm still sipping my venti coffee. It's so desperately needed. Okay. Let's start with some of the players that really impressed me. Now, one of the things that I loved in my time at the Senior Bowl so far is it really is the best of the best. Like when they talk about this compared to the Shrine Bowl, it seems like every single player that I saw was unbelievable. And one of the ways that it was really expressed was during the one-on-ones, especially when it came to the offensive line versus the defensive line. And I know there's been a lot of talk that this defensive line is deep, but I was really impressed with them and the offensive line. Like Chris Snee was front and center during all the offensive line drills. So that gives me a little bit of confidence, maybe, that hopefully they're going to get it right when it comes to whatever offensive lineman they draft. But I do feel like that is going to be a position that they focus on the draft. It should be a position that they focus on in the draft. And, it sounds like there's really going to be a lot of options when it comes to that. So the one-on-one battles were fantastic. I really liked a lot of the drills that they did, and I was front and center for a lot of them. So the safeties, we've got a really good opportunity to see them doing cutting, different drills, the way they ran across the field, how they were able to catch, whether it was, a contested catch type of ball or it was one that was right in the hands. Like, how did they do it? That same thing with some of the edge. They did really similar drills and the linebackers. So it's a really great opportunity to see these guys up close and personal. And if anyone is ever considering going to the Senior Bowl, go during the week and go to the practices because they are fantastic. So this is how it works. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they have practices, the national and the American teams. So it's an hour and a half for one, and then an hour and a half or 2 hours for the other. Practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is off, and then Saturday is the game. And then if you have a media credential like I did, you get to go on the field after each one of the practices, and you get 10 minutes to grab whoever you can and interview them. So that's how I got to talk to Joe Schoen, and it's how I got to talk to some of the other players. Spoiler alert, I did get to speak to Mason Taylor, the LSU tight end. So stay tuned because that little clip is coming soon on my Instagram at Empire State Sports Report. So we'll talk about Mason Taylor when we get to the offense. I want to start with the defense because there were a lot of players that I was really impressed with. And, I got to speak with Dave Syvertson, who you guys know and love, the scout from our lads. Him and I had a great conversation during this week, and he's going to come on the podcast next week. And we're really going to dissect the Senior Bowl, and we're going to recap it. And we're going to kind of compare notes on guys that he saw and loved versus some of the guys that I saw and loved. And, there's a lot of players, and when they do the different drills, it's like training camp where some of them are on one side of the field and some of them are on the other. So you can't fully see everything that's going on, but you do over the couple of days, like you really start to get familiar with the players, and especially during the media interviews and things like that. So one of the guys that I really loved, and he just stood out to me from day one, was Louisville cornerback Quincy Riley. He's feisty. He had a really great practice all 3 days. In size, I would say he reminds me of Cordell Flott. He's bigger than Cordell Flott. He is has more muscle, definitely not as lean as Cordell Flott, but his sizing, I would say, just kind of reminds me of him. Maybe also like a Sauce Gardner, but I get the feeling from him that he is going to be one of those players that transfers well into the NFL. He has a day 2 grade as of right now, but he is a really physical corner. And, we talk about this with Tay Banks a lot, and I'm sure there are going to be other corners that the Giants are looking into as well. But, one of the things we always talk about with Banks is that he's not really that physical, and he never makes a play on the ball. And who does do that is Quincy Riley. So keep your eyes peeled for him. If you're watching the Senior Bowl on Saturday, I believe he was wearing number 1. So I can confirm that for you real quick. So if you guys are watching, you can look for him. Yes, number 1, Louisville cornerback. Keep your eyes peeled on him. He did a really nice job. Okay, let's talk about edge rushers for a second, because there were 2 that I was really impressed with. One of them being Jeffrey Bassa, who is an edge from Oregon. And he doesn't have the best hands, which I think for an edge rusher is not really the most important. Like, we could say that also Aziz and Kayvon do not have the best hands either. I don't expect the edge rushers to always be catching interceptions. Like, that's for the safeties and the corners. Would it be nice? Yes. Would love it. Added bonus. But all the other things like the speed and the quickness and the spin moves, the things like that I saw from Jeffrey Bassa, I was really impressed with. He also came in as one of the top fastest defensive players in the Senior Bowl so far during the practices. So he's a guy to really watch out for again on Saturday if you are watching the game. Another one, I know we all we know how the Giants feel about Boston College. So let's talk about Boston College defensive end Donovan Izaruku. First step quickness, did a really nice job in practice. He is another, edge rusher type of player. Now, I know we are all dying for Abdul Carter, but if for whatever reason the Giants don't get him or they can't get him at 3, these are some of the other guys that popped up during practice this week, and who I'm sure once you hear the name, you will begin to hear him more over the next few weeks between Izaruku and what's his name, Bassa. So they have Izaruku as of right now, potential late round first to early second. So curious to see how that goes. Obviously, we know how time goes on, how all of this changes. Let's go back to cornerback for a second, because I want to talk about Isaiah Thomas. He was wearing number 8. He is a guy that has stood out from day one. I know there was a lot of talk and a lot of hype about him coming into the Senior Bowl, lived up to the hype. He is a guy who day one at practices seemed to jump off the charts. I was there day 2 and 3, and I feel like he really continued that. He is likely to be a late round 1 pick. That's what they have him projected as now. Again, as things change over the next couple weeks, we'll see how that goes. But he has long arms, thick legs, and he seems to move very confidently, which we like. So again, guys to watch out for. Those were some of the defensive players that I really loved. I do want to talk about the linebacker from the University of South Carolina, a Gamecock, who I got to speak with, Demetrius Knight II. There's an interview with him on my page if you want to go check it out. It's quick. But he, worked with Shane Beamer, who I also got to meet, who was fantastic. And, if you're a Carolina fan, I know there's not a ton of you listening, but if you're a Carolina fan and you see really what Beamer has done with this team, and you see how he instilled the greatness of teammates and working together, I really got that feel from, I talked to Kyle Kennard as well, who is an edge from the University of South Carolina. I really got the vibe from the two of them that Beamer he's a really good coach. And, what I really liked after getting to talk to both of those players is they spoke so highly of their coach, of course, but they also talked about, how he really taught them to be a man on and off the field and what that looks like. And they were both extremely humble, well-spoken, very kind to the media, answered all the questions. Like, I just got very good vibes from the two of them. So Kennard is an edge rusher. And the last I saw, they had him as, I think, the top 6. I'm curious to see if that changes after the Senior Bowl from what I had seen previously. And then Demetrius Knight also plays special teams. So he's got that versatility as a linebacker that he's able to do both. I don't know his projected round grade right now, but I was impressed with what I saw on him on the field this week. Really impressed with what I saw. Someone else I want to talk about is the UGA linebacker, Smale. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. And I was in line to interview him yesterday, and I just didn't have the time. Mondin Jr., Smale Mondin Jr. He is a linebacker from Georgia. He wears number 32. And you guys know how I feel about the players at the University of Georgia. Now, as a Gamecock fan, I hate them. We are rivals. However, as a Giants fan and an NFL fan, I would like all of them to be Giants. I've talked about this before, and this is what really pisses me off the most about the Eagles, because I fucking loved Nolan Smith last year, and the Giants just couldn't get him. And then this year, of course, they have wide receivers out there. They have linebackers. They have safeties. Like, every UGA player I saw today was fantastic. Another one was a safety. Last name is Jackson. Okay, let's see if I can find his name real quick. But another UGA player that just was like unbelievable, just stood out. Dan Jackson, number 37. Keep your eyes peeled for him um, on Saturday. I will say Mondin had a tough day today, and it was funny because I was talking to this kid next to me who unfortunately is an Eagles fan. But, we were talking about how as soon as we go to record something, like the guys that we record have a bad play. But from what I see from Mondin, he had a really nice day yesterday. Today, not so much. And this is what it is, right? Not every day is going to be perfect. We'll talk about Jalen Milroe when we get to the offensive players. But, how they're able to come back from it is what's really important. So I'm excited to watch Monzon, number 32, linebacker from Georgia, on Saturday to see how he can make up for the fact that, he didn't really have a great day today. And as the day went on, he did seem to get a little bit better. Like he did make some good plays and then, he had some not so good plays. So we talk about adversity a lot and how that affects these players. And it's something that I talked to LSU tight end Mason Taylor about, is that how they really come back from it is one of the most important traits that we see. So, all right, coffee break. So again, Georgia players, I would like them all, but I was really impressed with those two specifically. Dan Jackson, who is the safety, and then the linebacker, who I'm just completely blanking on his name right now. Smail Mondin Jr. Like I said, guys, it's been a long 48 hours, but let's move over to offense, because obviously there's a lot of players and I know that everyone wants to talk about the quarterbacks. So this is what I'm going to tell you about the quarterbacks is as soon as they started doing drills yesterday, Joe Schoen came walking along, stood right in front. Wherever they were doing drills, he was right there. Chris Snee, all over the offensive line all the time, was right there. Joe Schoen following the quarterbacks around. So listen, he's doing his due diligence. It doesn't mean anything. What I do know is that Jalen Milroe had, a not so great day yesterday. Today, he looked better. He was a little bit more accurate. But, he had a fumble. Yesterday, he had an interception. So there are definitely some concerns there. I think his athleticism and, he throws a beautiful deep ball, and he had a really nice one today that the receiver just couldn't, bring in. But he's got some good traits and, some bad traits. And I think ultimately when we talk about the quarterbacks overall, the biggest question mark for all of us is, is Brian Daboll really going to be able to take them to the next level, regardless of what their, skill level and talent level is. I don't think that any of the coaches in the NFL are magicians. I've said this before, but when you talk about, Bobby Johnson versus Carmen Brasillo, obviously the talent was better from last year to this year at the offensive line, but Carmen Brasillo, you cannot deny that he did a better job. So I like to hope and think that if Daboll gets a different quarterback in the building, that he's really going to be able to help them. And I do think he's going to like someone like Jalen Milroe. I think he's going to like his athleticism, his speed, the way that he really can tuck the ball and run, and he can make plays with his legs. Like we all know that that's a big part of Daboll's offense, and Jalen Milroe really does a nice job with that. But I think there are going to be some concerns when it comes to the turnovers, when it comes to getting the ball out quickly and not holding the ball for too long. These are the things that, we're going to see moving forward. So Jalen Milroe also is extremely humble. He does really well in front of the media. I don't know if he had any one-on-one time with the Giants. I am certain that he did, but he overall, was kind of up and down. So I'm curious to see again how he comes back from that on Saturday. Jackson Dart was mostly consistent when it comes to accuracy. The balls that I saw him throw were pretty dead on right to the wide receivers. I saw him make some nice plays. He was wearing a compression sleeve on his leg today, which he was not wearing yesterday. Don't know if there's anything there or whatnot. I do know that some players opted out of practice today. Mike Green is a guy that came up a lot on defense. He was a guy who didn't practice today. So another name to keep your eyes peeled for is Mike Green. He did a really nice job this week, but it's I don't know about Dart if there's anything there. So we'll see again what happens on Saturday. They do have the day off tomorrow, so I don't know if that's going to come into play at all. But Jackson Dart, very calm, cool, collected. He's good under pressure. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Great in front of the media. Seems very humble, down to earth. The same thing. I know we all love that he comes from Ole Miss, just like Eli Manning. But I think that he's one of those guys that, again, like Jalen Milroe, can tuck the ball and run. I think that he could, if he continues to play the way that he's playing during the game on Saturday, he could end up solidifying himself as maybe the third or fourth quarterback in this draft. I think it's likely to be between him or Milroe. He seems to be more consistent than Milroe. And I think if there's anything that's going to propel him to the NFL level, it's going to be something like that. He doesn't have the type of interceptions and, the fumbles and those types of mistakes that Jalen has. So, overall, Jackson Dart, I have good things to say about him. From what I saw, I was impressed. And I know that a lot of us Giants fans, for the most part, like him. And the one thing that I like about him, again, is that he is really good under pressure, which, as we know, is going to have to be a trait that is going to help you succeed in New York with this offensive line and with this just life in general that comes with it. Some other players that I want to talk about on the offensive side. So let's talk about, let me go to the offensive line here, because I know someone had mentioned the offensive lineman from, oh my God, this roster is a little messy. The offensive lineman from Boston College, Ozzy. This man is so large. I mean, all the offensive linemen, like I said, obviously, these are all big guys. He is even bigger than everyone else around him. He seems to have good balance from what I saw. He was able to move quite well. He just is that much taller, it seems to be, than everyone else. But like I said, this offensive line class is big coming out. And I think that is obviously something that is going to benefit the Giants, because we all know how they need some help. Someone else, Ozzy Trapillo, that is his last name for those of you who are wondering. I saw some good play today also from 55, Josh Connerly Jr., who is an Oregon offensive lineman. Oregon, I don't know how many of you, if anyone's an Oregon fan, if you watched them at all this year. I know obviously there's a lot of talk about Dylan Gabriel, but the amount of players that they have on offense and defense that were at the Senior Bowl, they're like, are they going to be the next UGA? Very impressed. And like I said, Jeffrey Bassa was one of them, but like a lot of the players that I saw from Oregon, I was impressed with. And I think Connerly Jr. did a nice job. So someone else who I know was talked about a lot and who also had a good day today was Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, another offensive lineman. He did well holding up in one-on-ones, and there were a ton of offensive linemen there. So I just feel like the depth is going to be there from an offensive lineman perspective across the board, whether it's going to be tackle, guard, or center. The Giants are going to have their plethora of options, regardless of whenever they want to draft an offensive lineman. So I like that for all of them. And I think we all probably feel the same. Let's talk about tight ends for a second, because I know that we all have heard about Tyler Warren from Penn State, and then this is a deep offensive tight end class, excuse me. So we need to talk about Elijah Arroyo from Miami. We, talk about these are the best of the best. He is also one of the best tight ends that we saw this week. Very talented. As of right now, he's graded as a round 2, but I think he is going to have the opportunity to potentially squeeze into round 1. He made some very impressive catches and stood out among some of the tight ends. And same thing with Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor, I got to speak with, also fantastic. He talked about, playing with Malik and how he's kept up with his career and what he could bring to the Giants. So that is coming soon on my Instagram. But another guy that just is so down to earth and kind and a monster when you talk about size. I mean, I think he's 6'4", 6'5". He is a big tight end. He can be a good receiver. I saw him make some really beautiful catches over the last couple of days. And I think that he would be a really nice option for a pass catcher for the Giants if they have an opportunity to get him. I don't know where he's going to end up falling in the draft, what his grade is going to be. But obviously we know how LSU is when it comes to breeding wide receivers, but we need to include Mason Taylor in that conversation because he has made some really impressive catches. And, for a guy to stand out among LSU offenses as a whole, when you're talking about these insane other wide receivers that they have, is really impressive. So really like Mason Taylor, again, another guy to really keep your eyes peeled on. I want to talk about two wide receivers that I saw. I bet you can guess what school this one's from. Arian Smith from Georgia, number 11, was impressed with some of the plays that he made. He also very down to earth. Was also in line to speak with him, didn't get the opportunity to, but he's a guy to keep your eyes peeled on. He's on the smaller side, I would say, I don't think he's as small as Wan'Dale Robinson, and I don't have all of these guys' measurements in front of me, but he's definitely a little bit on the smaller side when it comes to a wide receiver, but he made some really nice plays. He's fast, he's shifty, and he caught some really nice balls. And like I said, I literally trust anyone that comes out of UGA, and when you can see it with your own two eyes and just see how these guys are impressive, it's really awesome. And one more wide receiver, and then we'll cut it off here with players because there's so many of them. It's literally insane. Jack Beck from TCU. He was wearing number 7. He had some really nice catches from Dart and Milrow. He is also a bigger wide receiver, stands out among some of the other players. I just saw him make some really nice plays, some nice sideline catches. He's quick. He can escape from tackles. Again, in his size, he's like well over 6 feet. Size really makes him stand out among the crowd. So overall, this is a good group of players. I know we can all talk about the quarterbacks and how, they're not as great as last year and blah, 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 whatever, and that's fine. But it doesn't mean that the Giants are not going to get talented players in other positions across the board. So feel like they're going to have a lot of really good options, which is exciting. So now let's talk about Mike Kafka. So he spoke to the media yesterday, and I felt bad because he was really asked a lot. There are a lot of Saints and Bears fans here, and he was asked a lot about his experience with the interviews there. And, obviously he didn't get the Bears job, but everyone's like, what was your experience like? And how were the interviews? And, what's your relationship with Ryan Poles and all these kinds of things? And I just got the vibe that he was like, I'm answering these questions, but like, I obviously didn't get the job. So like, what do you think I'm going to say? You know what I mean? Like, what do you expect him to say? Oh, I had a terrible experience. That's why I didn't take the job. Come on. But anyway, he had nothing but nice things to say about the Bears. He said that him and Ryan Poles have a good relationship, and, the interview was good, and they did it over Zoom, and he got a good feeling when he was with them. And ultimately they went in a different direction, but he tries to be authentically himself. He doesn't really change much going from one interview to the other, going from the Bears to the Saints. He really sticks with being himself, being authentic, and, being exactly who he wants to be as a coach. So, he wasn't asked about the play calling at all, which I felt like was the right move. I mean, I don't really think that we're going to get any type of great answer there, just like we didn't really get it from Dable or anyone else. They've been asked about, the whole play calling situation that happened last year. And if Kafka ends up staying, we don't know if he's going to end up taking play calling back over. In my opinion, I think that's the right move. I just think Dable has enough on his plate. And if he has to mentor and teach a new quarterback how to be better, he's got to add that on top of his plate. And I just don't think that the play calling is going to be a good idea that he does that as well. So Kafka also said that his interview with the Saints was 9 hours, which is insane. But then I also saw that when Kellen Moore had his interview with the Saints, it started at night and I guess went until the early morning. So they are really having these long interviews. I don't know what they talk about for that long, wild to me. But he said, that the interview went well there and they didn't give him a timeline, that he's just waiting it out. His focus right now is the Senior Bowl. He is obviously the head coach and he is doing the best that he can to really get to know these players, to teach them the offense. And, he's dealing with a lot of players in a very short amount of time. And from what I observed from him as a head coach is when you look at him versus the Browns head coach who was coaching the other team, very different coaching styles. The Browns coach, very vocal, cheering, screaming, this and that. And Kafka was more subdued. I think that's just how he is. I think he's just a little bit more quiet and shy, but I get the vibe that he's more approachable, especially when you talk about him and Dable. Like, I think he's the approachable one. And if I'm a player, I get the vibe that I would feel more comfortable going to Kafka if I had any type of issue than I would Dable. But he seemed to very much be his authentic self, the way that he spoke to us with the media versus the way that he spoke to the players. And you could tell the way that he was coaching them and he was running the practice, like very just calm, cool, and collected. Doesn't fly off the handle, no screaming, no jumping up and down. Like he high-fived players and did things like that where you could tell, if they made a good play or, if you talked to them after something like that. But it was not explosive by any means, which is probably why he's been able to stick around so long with the Giants, because, we know what happened with Wink and Dable. And I just think that Kafka is not that guy. And that's probably why he tolerates Dable and his explosiveness, if you will. So I have a couple more Kafka videos that I'm going to post on Instagram, but I asked him about his experience at the Senior Bowl, and he said it's been fantastic, and he's really enjoyed getting to know the players and learning who they are off the field and, getting a feel for how they learn the offense and how long it takes or how short it takes and how he can help them improve and things like that. So he seems to be a very normal coach, I guess, if you will. I just got very good vibes from him. And honestly, I really feel for him. I feel like he's got the shit end of the stick ever since he's been here. So, that's that. But overall, Kafka, I think, has done a really nice job from what I've observed. Lastly, let's talk about Joe Schoen, because yes, I got to speak with Joe Schoen down on the field afterwards. Okay, so I asked him about the quarterbacks, and what I said was, I had like my little tripod and my phone ready to record, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not really doing interviews," and I was like, "Okay, can we just talk about the quarterbacks?" And he said, "I'm not answering any questions about the quarterbacks," and that's on me, because what I was going to ask him was just, I saw you right there with the quarterbacks. Did you observe anything specific from this group of quarterback class? He still might not have answered it, but that's what I was going to ask. Not like, did you like Milroe better than Dart? Because obviously I knew he wasn't going to answer that. So, I asked him about the different position groups and was there a specific position group that really stood out to him? And he said, no, when you're watching these players, like these are the best of the best that are coming out. These are the guys that are going to be in rounds 1, 2, and 3. These are, the top players, obviously outside of Sanders and Ward, who were at the Shrine Bowl instead this year. But, he really just said, like, these are the best of the best, that everyone is so good that it's not like one group is that much better than anyone else. And that's kind of the vibe that I got. And that's, I think the whole premise of the Senior Bowl versus the Shrine Bowl, from what I've learned over the last couple of days, is the Senior Bowl is the gold star, and the Shrine Bowl, how about this? The Senior Bowl is the Yankees with 27 World Series champions, and then you guys are going to hate this. The Shrine Bowl is the little brother, the Mets. I'm just kidding, guys, but it's a fair comparison, okay? The Mets, when they get there, then there will be no little brother talk, okay? Anyway, so we talked a little bit about food. Joe Schoen is a smoothie fan, which I did not know. Tropical smoothies are his jam. He also likes cookout. And we talked about Mellow Mushroom, which is one of my favorite pizza places down here. Joe Schoen is also a fan. So he has been out and about. Like I said, he was very not going to answer specific questions, which was what all of my questions to him were going to be. When you're in a position like that, like I could have asked him 700 questions and all of them he would have said no to, which I get. I don't blame him at all. It's par for the course. It comes with the job. I get it. So I was hoping to see him after the second practice. I didn't get an opportunity to talk to him or Chris Nee, but I did get to talk to Mason Taylor. So it is what it is. We'll see if I happen to bump into Joe Schoen over my next 48 hours here and see if I can ask him any other questions. But he was very kind. He was very respectful. We were joking around about food and this and that. And he is a nice person. He just is a stickler in negotiations, apparently. So I am glad that I don't have to do any negotiations with him. But, I have had my gripes with him and Dable, and I stand by them. The team was 3-14 this year. I think it's really tough to look at the body of his work and say that he's done a great job. He's done some great things. This 2024 draft class has been great. If he can do it again, will be in good shoes. And I hope that he does. He's back. I want this team to win. At the end of the day, I'm a fan. I want the Giants to win football games. God damn it. Like, I want to go to MetLife and cheer on my team and watch them win instead of leaving early every time because they're getting blown out at home, or better yet, in Germany. So anyway, I wish him and the rest of the team the best of luck, because I want nothing more than for this to work for all of us so we can all be happy at the end of the day. Am I sold on that happening? Not yet, but I could be if we have a good year this year. So pressure's on, Joe. Just kidding. Anyway, so that's it here from the Senior Bowl. I'll be at the game on Saturday and headed home Saturday night. I will recap the game next week. And then, like I said, make sure you subscribe, guys, because you're going to love the Dave Syvertson episode. I know everyone loved the first one, but that was before we got to see all the players up close at the Senior Bowl. So I know you're going to love the next one. And next week, we'll get back on track talking more Yankees and Mets too. We can talk about Hal Steinbrenner. The Mets made a couple signings over the last few days, so we'll talk about that. And it's going to be almost spring training, so the baseball content is going to be ramping up. So thank you all so much for listening. Please subscribe, share with your friends, rate and review, and I will be back next week. Thanks for listening.